Cool.
Got it. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm being quite honest, I suppose, that this is a very real-time experience of something that I think affects us as professionals. And so it's the response to burnout. And I think there's points where you can feel the burnout on you. And I'll just go at the moment that the directions are to push through until you get a second wind. And sometimes that happens. Or do you stop and take stock and recover, knowing that if you stop and take stock, more stuff builds up, which is going to give you more anxiety about having to play catch up from the things that you stopped doing. But then if you don't stop and take stock, you're not performing at your best. And so you're only slowly getting things done. And so the work's creepingly building up anyway. And then it gets harder to want to stop because all the things that have been creeping upon you, they're getting closer and closer. And if you stop, they'll overtake you. And so it's the dilemma of that. And so before we get into what to do, of course, it's all the negative consequences of that, because already I can imagine not only for the person experiencing that period of burnout, but also the people they're working with and the duties that are their responsibilities and things that they're supposed to do will suffer consequences. So how bad can it get during that season of burnout if it's not responded to in the right way?
I mean, ultimately, if you've got all of those things to do and there's things set out, then you're not going to achieve your overall goal, which means that it ends up being this cycle of horribleness because you're not going to get there, and you're not going to feel when you get there good when you get there either. So I suppose it could spiral really, personally, and for the company you're working with, or for and for the people around you as well. Yeah. Especially if you're a key part of it.
And the caveat I'll quickly add as well, which doesn't take away from what you said, is if you don't stop and take stock and get that rest period, you can do enough to placate all of those things, but that's not the same as doing them properly, doing them well, and being ahead of things. There's always going to be something hiding around the corner that you just haven't done that eventually will creep up on you. So just that bit of context. It's not that you're not doing anything, it's just that you're plodding along, doing enough that maybe some people won't notice, but you notice. And eventually someone's going to say, well, that's not how that's supposed to be done. That hasn't been done. And
they're phoning it in. And eventually it catches up. The quality takes the quality of it. 100%. Before you know it, you're not making the marginal gain or the profit that you think you're supposed to be making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is very heavy. It's very full on. I remember maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the hyper stress moment. And I feel like this is an extension of that, really. It's when you have a quick succession of those and you're kind of just not dealing with the issue per se, and then you get to the point where you just feel strung out. Already explained. This stuff is serious, it changes people's personalities, it changes people's jobs, professions. People just kind of give up on this stuff. And if we're taking it to the bottom, that's what you can get sometimes, that sense of hopelessness where you just go, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, or I can't do this anymore. And to take it to the very, very bottom, I mean, you get some really high stress situations, jobs, circumstances, where I don't know, something that comes to mind was that that guy who racked up like $1 billion in debt for a bank. Oh, it was such a while ago, I can't remember the details, for a banking firm. But I can't imagine, the kind of headspace you've got to be in then, where you are just under immense stress and immense burnout, and you're trying to fix things, but you're not at your. So you kind of make things worse, and you make things worse, and you make things worse. It really, really can go to the pits, and some people just check out.
I think you've made a really good point there, especially even right from the beginning with the hyper stress we discussed a few weeks ago. It's almost like low-level sickness, and it's like, I can carry on, I can get through this, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's like your body's like stress and anxiety is your body firing warning signs at you that I'm going to get sick if you carry on, and I'm going to get sick to the point where you have to stop. And normally we know when we're fully sick or fully gone or hyper stressed that there's a moment where you just can't do it, you just black out, and everybody accepts it. What we don't forgive ourselves or each other for not fighting through the low-level sickness which builds up. And if anything, is only going to get you to that worst place, but with all the baggage of not having performed at your best anyway. And so if you see it that way, it's almost like your body's screaming, hey, I'm about to get to the place where you don't get a choice. So maybe make a better choice now. But then if you're always given into that feeling, then you're not going to be successful because you have responsibilities. And sometimes you do have to fight through those bits where you can. And sometimes you do get a second wind. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, I feel this, especially if you have responsibilities, and saying, I'm going to shut it down, because you can't always shut it down.
I feel like this stuff is really insidious, right? Because it's difficult sometimes to tell where the line is, like when is too much work, or what is the straw that will break the camel's back? Oh, it's just another email, it's just another meeting, it's another report. What is the thing that will take you over the edge, or will get you to the point where, okay, you may not realize it, but after a while your subconscious starts kicking in, like, hey, we've got a problem here.
It does bleed into different areas of your life, doesn't it? You'll find yourself saying, oh, wait, I haven't cooked yet. Oh, no, I haven't tidied that. Oh, wait, I haven't done the laundry. I haven't done. Before you know it, everything is knocked off kilter. And it's like, especially if you keep quite a busy life, you kind of need everything to be in working order. And one thing falls, suddenly it's all having a knock-on effect and the dominoes just fall. And so, yeah, you're right. It can have a creeping, insidious effect.
Isn't it awful, though, that, you know how that thing of everyone gets ill at Christmas, especially if they're in a high-stress job, or they get ill as soon as they go on holiday. That's so normal, and we speak about it quite normally. We're like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to get ill because I'm going on holiday. And that's the bit that you're actually not supposed to get there. You're supposed to prevent that from happening, and your holiday is supposed to be relaxing.
Oh,
yeah, that's not normal.
But there's a juncture, isn't there? Because we've just spent the last little bit talking about the impact on the individual, which you've got to have empathy for. But when you work with people, you belong to a team. And so, of course, your team hopefully cares that you're functioning at your best. You've got responsibilities to them as well. And so, in two senses, if you shut down too quickly, you're not reliable. But also, if you drag on this feeling, you're going to end up creating work for others or not allowing them to thrive because you're not able to do your part in the way that you should be. And people are having to make concessions around you, which can be draining and tiring for them.
I think one of the lessons that I struggled with when I was much younger, but taking on more and more responsibility, was, that exact feeling where I felt like, okay, I've got to do this. I can't let people down. I can't let people down. And it took someone to take me aside and say, look, I think you might be suffering from a bit of burnout here. And actually, it's starting to show in some of the stuff that you are producing, or maybe it's like, a day here where you miss this deadline, or a day there where you're late for this thing. And he just very subtly kind of said, look, this is something that you want to watch out for and make sure that you don't get to that point, because when you do, you think you're helping the team out, but actually when you hit that point, it's complete collapse and the team suffers even more from it.
Yeah.
More to the point, I think, well, that's just one thing that can go wrong, kind of, while we're on the topic of taking it to the bottom.
Yeah, and it's probably a formula somewhere where if you shut down at the right time and get the right rest, even though you create a small amount of mayhem, let's say, in a working pattern, you'll catch up sooner than coming back at your best. Then it's easier to reverse the damage of a long, drawn-out period of operating at 80, then 75, then 70%, then 65%, and you get to 50 and someone says to you, hey, pack it, go and get some rest. But the collateral percentages are probably in your favor just to go 100% off and then come back stronger. And I think actually, I suppose as we start to bring it out from the bottom again, one of the things that I think is feeling permission from yourself first and then others around you to treat that as a focus. And I think if you don't give yourself permission to recover, it's like anything else. If you don't give yourself permission to say, okay, I'm allowed to deal with this moment and get better, then it's going to be stressful, even if you try and take the time off. And I know Jankee's talked about that before, about being anxious while she's been off. And that's probably because you haven't given yourself permission or felt the permission to use the time to recover. I don't know what you think about that, and if you think that's part of us finding solutions and whatever solutions you think there are to this for the individual and for the team that they're in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think not just on a personal level, but as a working culture, this is something, like you mentioned before, that isn't, it's harder to pin down than turning up to work and coughing I mean, you don't do that these days. But like like sneezing or, you know, being visibly unwell, then compared to what we're talking about now, it's something that's harder to pin down, and therefore, you know, it's less provisions are made for it. So as a work culture, I think it's something else where we kind of need to say, look, someone puts their hand up and says, I'm suffering from this, and I think it needs to be less of an eye roll from everyone else.
Also, I think it's for yourself, isn't it? Because I'm sure going Jankee.
No, it was off on a tangent, but you can finish that.
Just going to add that sometimes it depends how you trust yourself, because you know when it's another person, one of your colleagues, you know the person who's always sick, quote unquote, and the person who's going to take the easy road no matter what. And you know the person who works so hard and is so effective that you go, hey, no, take the time. You don't even think about it because you trust them. And I don't know if we trust ourselves at the same level to say, I know I work hard, and I know when I'm at my best, I do better than this. So I should permit myself to take what I need to recover because I know I'm better than this. Whereas if you don't trust yourself, you probably go, is this me taking the easy way out? Am I being lazy? Can I push through? And you need to almost trust who you are. I mean, I know that I can do better than this if I get the rest.
Yeah, it's being responsible with kind of what Charlie said about what you take on as well. Because if you know that you're getting to a stage where you're burning out, that's not a normal thing to do. It means that, have you actually considered the resources it takes to do that job effectively? And is there a lack of a resource? Have you planned for that properly? Because burning out isn't normal. It happens to us so often that we're just like, oh, I'm at that stage where I need to take 2 weeks off, but that's just not how it's supposed to be. It means that something could be wrong with the planning and the structure of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. What you're doing in life should be in some way sustainable, is what you're saying. And if you're making plans that aren't sustainable and it's built for you to crash, then it's almost like you drive a car that overheats during the journey, or a phone that overheats. It's like, this phone's not been made properly. Shouldn't be overheating. No, just take it off and put it next to the cooler. No, I've just been on the phone. Why is it about to blow up? And I think it's similar to how we work. That's a good analogy.
Well, it's yours. So
well, you started it with in terms of I just used the metaphor, but you
yeah.
No,
it's also, can you pass off any of your work to someone else, and are you able to? And if you're not, then you can't be the only person that can do that job. There has to be some sort of succession or something that someone could pick up whilst you're away. Why should that role or that task completely stop with just you? And that is naturally going to build pressure. If it's only you that's doing it, and you know that 50 people are relying on it, that's also not good planning.
Yeah. So in this context then, as we draw this to a close, I think, of small business professionals with responsibilities, and given what you just said, sometimes you are the only person with oversight for a given thing, or at least if you give it to someone else, there's someone else who's just as busy, and so you have that guilt. What is one more radical and what is one more reasonable way of dealing with that, so that you don't completely burn out, but also you have considerations for your roles and responsibilities?
I don't know if there's a radical one that's going to fit both of those things, but the work's going to be there regardless of whether you're there or not, and it's going to happen. It's going to need to happen. So just, I suppose, learn how to put a lid on it, walk away and come back. It's very unlikely going to break the world, the bit that you're not doing, because we don't work in those sorts of jobs. There are some jobs where it might break the world, but if you can do that, then just do it, because the work's just going to be there. It's never going to stop.
So just have the cheese and wine party is what you're saying.
Basically have it, be ambushed by Kate, and just get on with it. Have that break and then come back to it. Okay. I'm not condoning that, by the way.
Hey, I'm taking that as solid advice, so I'm just going to come back to you after the pod.
Jankee said. Okay, so my bit of advice here comes from the obviously more rational, comes from a lot of what Jankee was saying about around the planning, right? And something that I do, I mean, I don't do it to perfection, but I'm realizing more and more that not enough people do, right? So Deola, you'll know I'm very big on task management and task management systems and planning, and knowing what all your projects are across, you know, work, but also life, just literally everything that you do. map it down, put it down, and I think that gives you a clearer idea of just how much work you're taking on. Now, don't get me wrong, for some people who are not, I mean, these are glorified and techie versions of to-do lists, essentially. And we're talking about getting things done, David Allen methodology type of thing, which completely revolutionized how I approach work and life, to be honest, back when I first discovered it. But that would be my main thing, because I think for me, that always gives me a clear indicator of actually this thing is that, you know, this particular project has got hundreds of tasks. This is too much. And when you postpone a task, then you realize that, okay, this system is not working. I can't possibly deal with this. I need a better system, which may involve delegation, involve better infrastructure than what I currently have now. But I guess the crux of what I'm saying is it's a task management system. I think seeing it visually allows you to better realize when it's too much.
So I think actually what both of you have done is better than what I asked for. You've given how to manage it at 2 different stages. Jankee's talked about what to do when you're in that mess, and you talked about how to avoid getting into the mess in the future, which is the planet. And so and just as a final comment, one of the bottom things, which I think both of those things address, is that bit where you're operating less, the frustration is not working to your own standard. And so if you've planned a piece of work, you want to be able to do it to the standard that you've set. And so I think both of what you said will help to do that and achieve that. So thanks.
Welcome.
No, sir.